Right now we're talking BBI manenos. Wachana na hizo story mnachapa hapo kwa community hapo na amna details. Let's talk about facts. And that's why we have lawyer Kamotho Waiganjo, who's a constitution expert, to just take us through it. Now, before we took the break, you were telling us that the issue with our current constitution is basically implementation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And here we have a situation where there's something new that's coming up in the market. I don't know whether timing is right. You know, to be honest, I think it's, a bit in bad taste because we're smack in the middle of a pandemic. But when you look at some of the vipengele zenye zimetoka kwa hii constitution, hii document, ni how power will be shared.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of confusion around that. So take us through that. What do they mean when they're saying, okay, there'll be a president and then there'll be a prime minister who'll be from the, who'll be chosen by the president, and then there will be a head of opposition. Take us through that.
Okay. Thanks, Sheila. Mm-hmm. And I am sure I can make a request that when you play a song, please play me a song by Vybez Signal. This is a privilege. This is a privilege of being.
You can tell who is going to vote.
You have no way of saying no.
I got you.
Back to serious business.
Right.
I think it's important for us to understand BBI because sometimes people also get confused about what BBI is. BBI essentially has three components, and because this is sort of a civic education session, it's important for people to understand that.
Yeah.
When people talk about BBI, they bunch three things that are in that document, and sometimes that's where confusion arises. BBI has a set of what are called policy proposals, things that will not require constitutional change. A lot of the things that young people should be interested in are actually found in those policy proposals. That's where you find proposals about 7-year tax holiday for startup businesses, loan, the help loans being held until you get a job. Those things. There are very many policy proposals that government can do without having to change any law. And one hopes that government is already doing that. In fact, even I was campaigning for young people, what I'd be telling government, thank you very much for the constitutional change, but the things that you have said you'll do policy which don't require constitutional change, can you give us a work plan for how you're going to do that? Because those ones don't require referendum. And I think someone needs to unpack those and run with those, because those governments should do it because they've committed to.
Yeah.
The second one is what are called statutory changes in the law that will be required to be changed in Parliament. Again, those that don't require those don't require referendum, and those can start immediately.
Yeah.
Again, it would have been helpful for now to see in terms of timelines, when is Parliament going to start working on these things that don't require referendum? Now, the area where a lot of attention is given is the third aspect, which is the constitutional changes. And those constitutional changes are the ones now we're talking about. And those constitutional changes affect the three arms of government. They affect the judiciary, they affect the legislature, and they affect the executive. Now, what you're asking about the expansion to include the prime minister and the deputy prime ministers is a change in the executive and a change in the legislature. Legislature is Parliament, our National Assembly, and the Senate.
Yeah.
What the fundamental justification for this change is the argument that the way power is structured in the current constitution, it tends to exclude. Your viewers will know that the way our constitution now is that at the top of the executive, we only have the president and the deputy. That essentially means that in a political system which revolves around regions and communities, you end up having a coalition of two communities in the lead. That actually is the issue, that there's a feeling that the two communities that the lead in a country with 40 plus communities is too small, and it tends to advantage certain communities. Because if you're the majority community with about 25% of the population, it essentially means that you'll always either be president or deputy. So the thinking was expand that top to include at least 4 or 5 other people, so that space is not left to only 2 people. And that allows better coalition making at the top. Because, like it or not, Kenyans still vote around communities. Even if Kenyans say, as we are not tribal, we are not ethnic, they still want one of their own at the top. That is one of the hypocrisies of us as a political system. So that is the reason why that was expanded.
Yeah.
The understanding being that you'll have a prime minister who is both in the executive, but in the sense that he's a senior most minister, but will also be the one who leads government in parliament. This is a new change from what we had before. And then you'll have 2 deputy prime ministers, essentially meaning that you'll have 5 senior persons in the executive, the president, the deputy president, the prime minister, and the 2 deputies, who are now part of a coalition of communities, if one was to really be frank. And so that is the thinking behind it. Now, the other question you asked is about the leader of the official opposition. You will know that today what happens is that the person who is the runner-up to an election, for example, last time it was Honorable Raila Odinga, that person, once they lose the election, they just go home.
Yeah.
We tell them, thank you very much, it was not nice knowing you, and we come, let's see you in 5 years' time. Now, don't forget that the way our elections are is that our elections usually tend to be about 55-45 at worst. Which means that the losing candidate controls the loyalty of almost half the country.
The nation.
Now, to tell that person to just go, then gives them no incentive to support the result, because if they support the result, it means they go home. So what normally happens is that whether the elections have, and all elections will always have challenges. There's no perfect election that we are seeing even in America. So what happens is that person can then accelerate, they can enhance that argument and make the country fairly ungovernable for a season. So the thinking is, why don't we then allow that person automatically to have a seat in parliament, fairly senior. He's going to lead the opposition in parliament. He's going to have the profile and the razzmatazz of cabinet minister plus, and therefore enable him to be able to give them, him or her, an incentive then to support the election. But even more importantly, the opposition in parliament has become very politically very weak because the people who are called the leader of the opposition, Kina John Bandi and others, they are, of course, within their parties, they are chairs, but they're not really the political heads of that party. So in terms of gaining the respect and the profile of the other members of parliament so that they can marshal them to oppose government, they then tend to be weak. But if you had Honorable Raila Odinga in the House, with his MPs, that becomes a very strong opposition to check government. So the thinking was these 2 levels: give the person an incentive to support the result even when they have lost, but number 2, also strengthen the opposition in the House. So that was the thinking around those 2 issues. I'll tell you what the challenges are.
Before we get to the challenges.
But I think it's important for us to understand what the justification is.
Before we get to the challenges, I just want to go back to leader of opposition. Now, if you look at before the 2010 constitution, we had a very healthy, thriving opposition. You would hear, and in that respect, it was Raila Odinga.
And he was in parliament.
He was in parliament. Was this because at that point when you're running for president, you couldn't be an MP or something like that, so you still could come to parliament? Was that what changed?
Yes, that is what changed. And in fact, it's interesting, Sheila, you raised that because we have had 3 major leaders of the opposition: Honorable Raila Odinga, Honorable Mwai Kibaki, and Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta. They have been leaders of the opposition. And you notice why that is important is because it builds a profile. Honorable Mwai Kibaki rose from being leader of the opposition to being president. Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta rose from being leader of the opposition to president. Honorable Raila Odinga rose from being leader of the opposition to prime minister. So there's a sense in which those people played a critical role, and that's why you remember the leader of the official opposition those days. Because this was not just a titular head. This was not just a title. It was actually the political head of the opposition. But the minute we removed MPs, people who ran from president for running for MP, it means that once you lose the presidency, you are not in the House. So you can no longer be leader of the opposition in the House. So that was a defect in the system. That is one of those things that I said needed to be corrected. And it is not a negative thing. It's good for political development. It's good for the ability for the opposition to hold the government in check.
All right.
So now another question that I have, I feel like this is so important. It's The proponents of the BBI are very convinced that this document, it's perfect. No more reviewing it. Listen, we have to just go get this million signatures and we put a referendum out there. You vote for it and it becomes law. The country, the lives of Kenyans are going to change. But now you have a majority, in fact, a majority of Kenyans who are like, you can't shove this thing down our throats.
Yeah.
Don't you think it creates disparity amongst Kenyans? And even if this thing becomes law, it's really going to take some time before Kenyans accept it. And really, I don't think it's going to solve the issues. That's how majority of people are looking at it. They're not feeling part of the process.
Of course.
Those are critical questions.
Yes.
And Sheila, do you want me to respond to that very quickly?
I do. But before you respond to that, I want you to respond to that as we go into the break. You were talking about challenges. So we're talking about changing this, executive and adding different things. What are the challenges?
Okay. In fact, I'll answer that together. I think one has to look at the BBI journey. This is not the first document that has come with proposals on this BBI journey. This document was launched, I think, about 6 months ago. I can't remember exactly the time, with certain proposals. It was then subjected to discussions, and people made suggestions. And you will actually notice that between draft 1 and draft 2, there have been some changes. The truth of the matter is that in the process of constitution making, you do have to come to an end. It's very difficult in a document like this, which are compromise. These are negotiated documents.
Yes.
People have extreme positions both ways. So in a sense, there'll always be times there are things I don't agree with. But you can never get to the point where all Kenyans agree. Great, this is the perfect document. Let us now proceed. At some point, it's also considering that there are time constraints. At some point, you've got to say this is the end. Now, having said that. The truth of the matter is there are some challenges that the document does need to address, and the challenges don't go into whether one agrees with BBI or not. Even if we agree with the concept, there are certain challenges, like the one we have just discussed now about the executive. I'll tell you two possible problems that I think would improve the document. One is the leader of the opposition. The leader of opposition in Kenyan politics is not just a person. That person comes with a coalition. When you stand for president, you nominate a deputy, and I suppose that you'll also be nominating a prime minister. Now, when you lose the election as a coalition, the coalition that loses is not just a coalition of those two, of that one individual called the president, whoever, the one who lost the election. It is also not the running mate, the person who lost, the runner-up. It's not just the runner-up. It is also his team. Now, when you leave particularly the two top persons, being the person they had designated as a prime minister and a deputy president out of parliament, it is also not healthy. My thinking had been that in any case we're adding 2 members of parliament, and I would imagine that those would still not exceed us between the 360 members that we have put. If we had called those 2 into parliament and called them deputies, it would have helped really feel that the leader of the opposition is really, we're institutionalizing that office as opposed to just creating the one person. That does not kill the BBI, it strengthens it. Number 2 is the question of the prime minister, deputy prime minister. The process in the BBI now allows the president to fire those 3 people without cause. And you see, that is problematic. If we are talking about enhancing these offices, if you are saying that we want to enhance the office of the prime minister and the deputy prime minister, you also don't want them to be sacked like any other cabinet minister. The reason why the deputy presidency seat now is taken very seriously is because they can't be fired. So there's a sense in which you would have strengthened it by saying that the president would require the majority of parliament before they can fire either the prime minister or the deputy prime minister. So you distinguish them from the other cabinet secretaries. So those are some of the things in that area of the executive which I think would have been useful to adjust. And number 3, purely in terms of politics, it is never helpful to tell people this is it, we are not going to take any suggestions. It's always more politically palatable. Look, we'll look at it. There may be some challenges here and there, but let's recognize that it's a consensus document. We may not be able to accommodate everything that everybody wants, but we'll look at it. That is more politically smart than just saying it's my way or
closed.
highway. So in my view, that is.
Yes.
But fundamentally, from where I sit, the document with a little panel beating here and there is passable.
All right. Of course, we got lawyer Kamotho Waiganjo, constitutional expert, taking us through BBI. Remember, it's up to you. What questions do you have? Hit us up on that hashtag Kwambox and Kev. Now, you're probably in traffic na dere anaendesha kaa, yani anaopeleka kwa grave na uongei. We ni aje wewe. Tumekuambia speak up. In the meantime, traffic.
Morning Vibes, where you are the MVP. No negative vibes.
All right. Remember, we're speaking about BBI, and of course, we got lawyer Kamotho Waiganjo with us. Karibu sana tena sana. You're really opening our eyes to this. I gotta ask you. This is a question that one of our listeners is asking. Are you for this document or are you against it? I feel like I should have asked you at the end, but let's just get right into it.
No, I think. I mean, this is all. It's a nuanced document. If you were to ask me, if it came before me and I had to vote for it, I would vote yes with reservations. Because if in my best world, I'd have wanted to vote for specific provisions.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are more provisions I like than the ones I don't like.
Yeah.
And there are some provisions that I absolutely love. I am very pro-devolution. I am I've always been very pro-devolution.
Yeah.
And for me, the more money we take to the counties, despite the problems there, it's still better for the country, because there are two things that it does. Where the country is going to be changed is not in Nairobi. Where the country is going to be changed is when people have opportunities in Trans Nzoia, in Kapenguria, in Kilifi. That is where the country is going to be changed. In fact, for young people, the more opportunities there are out there, when we have the centers of excellence, the centers of economy in the region, the better. The more money we have here in Nairobi, it only benefits a few people. So out there, even if a lot of it, some of it is inasaidia wale wako huko. Hata ile inachukuliwa na inaachwa tu hapo. A small mechanic is helped. The local fundi is helped. So in a sense, for me, if we were to take 35% of our resources to the region, it is still good for the country. Right now, we are taking at most about 17%.
Is that plausible? That's another question. When we started this conversation, we had a conversation about, we already have a constitution, and one of the biggest challenges in implementing this constitution has just been implementation. Enforcing, making sure that, whatever is meant for the people gets to the people. For when Kenyans look at this document and the rhetoric that's been in the news, how this document has been brought to the people, which it hasn't, it almost seems like it is for the political elite and it has nothing to do with the people. Munambiwa, there's some MPs who are going around, we've been told by our listeners, who tell them, mutakunywa hii kitu kama polio.
By force.
So, even if we add and you say, okay, fine, let's put more money to the counties, what we have seen is, there are three governors who are DPPs following their cases because of corruption, massive corruption. We have stats telling us that in the past 4 years, less than 4 years, from 2017 hadi wa leo, 230 billion has been stolen. So, is this the priority?
That's an excellent conversation. Here is the question. The 224 billion shillings has been stolen from where? It's not been stolen from the counties. If you look at the audit report, the amount of money that you would say, assuming the 224 is correct, the amount of money that you'd say has disappeared on account of the counties is about 20 billion shillings. The other 200 has disappeared here in Nairobi. So that's why I'm saying that if we accept the reality that with time, I would hope that we will stop stealing public money. But I believe myself that the more we develop, the more difficult it becomes actually to take money. If assume that we have 6 governors in court. We have how many permanent secretaries in court? How many heads of parastatals here in Nairobi in court? They are in their cause of them. So the problem with corruption is not a county problem. It is a national problem. And I believe myself that it reduces the more you take money to the ground. You see, we're not talking about a very perfect national government and a corrupt county government. We're talking about a corrupt system. And don't forget that the ease with which money gets lost at the national level is shocking. We can lose in one deal 60 billion shillings at the national level.
Wow.
That is how we lost the money for Referendum. I think the total amount that was lost is about 60 billion shillings. In the county government, look at the amount of money that most of these governors are being charged with. Governor of Ojamong is in court over 10 million shillings.
Yeah.
10 million. Yeah. The PS Treasury is in court over 60 billion shillings. So I'm just saying it's important also to look at scale.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that 10 million shillings should be taken. But it just says that as we have a conversation about corruption, let us not buy the narrative that corruption is happening to the country, and therefore let's not send more money there.
Yeah.
Let us send money there and create structures to make sure that people are not stealing. Empower people, empower Kenyans, make sure that Kenyans hold their governors accountable, continue to do that, but do not leave money in Nairobi, because the ease with which money disappears is actually easier in Nairobi. So that's number one. Number two is the question is implementation. The truth of the matter is, government does not need the constitution to increase money to the counties. It doesn't. It doesn't. Actually, government could even send 50% of the money to the counties without BBI.
True.
But you and I know that governments are usually forced to do things by law.
Yeah.
This BBI is largely a political settlement document. I think we need to accept that. It was a document for politicians. It
100%. Yes.
It was a settlement to resolve political questions. It is not a document primarily intended to resolve your problem as a citizen.
Yeah.
Only sometimes your problems are peripheral. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
However, and that's why I said the reason why I support the devolution component is that it is probably the only component that would help the citizen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
And the reason why it was put there is so that citizens also don't make too much noise about this only being a political consensus document.
Yeah.
So for me, I say, look, if we will pay a price of increasing the number of seats at the top, but we ensure that we are reducing the money available at that top, I am okay to say it's not my ideal thing, but I'm better off that way. I'm better off with that. I'm willing to swallow this side that I don't like for the bigger good of ensuring that we have more money in the regions. Don't forget that the reason why there's a fight for people to join the top is because of the money there.
Yeah.
100%.
The minute constitutionally you have to release that money as a matter of the constitution, you are going to have to remove it. Maybe this government may not, but the next government will. But I'm just saying that we are better off with a constitutional protection of resources going to the counties, and let us then find how do the people of West Pokot protect their money, as opposed to money all staying here in Nairobi, and none of us know how to hold the people in Nairobi accountable.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. They're not. It's a very difficult question when it is thrown to yes or no, because I have more yes, but I have some few no's. So what do I do?
So what do I do?
Yeah. Interesting.
Last year, Ekuru Court tabled a document which was also seeking to change the constitution. And that document was shut down. And it had, if you look at that document, it had more things, towards helping the people. It was talking about, someone is caught in corruption, in a corruption scandal, within 60 to 90 days, that they should be, the court case, which is, maybe a few days, maybe 6 months, I guess.
6 months, yeah.
Yes, should be, the court case should be over, and so many other things. But it was shut down by the counties. BBI, on the other hand, is going a very different direction, where it almost seems like there's caucuses, of what do you want? What can I give you? Okay, this is what. Okay, let's go. So, if you are a constitutional expert, if you had a chance, which one made much more sense to you?
Let me say this: both of them had some good points. For example, one of the beauties of the Cruz document is that it reduced the size of government.
Yes.
It required the reduction of the size of government. It reduced the number of members of parliament. And so in a sense, that was positive, and I think it was very pro-people. One of the challenges with BBI is that it increases the size of government.
Yes.
And that, of course, causes concerns for people. But I think part of the problem, again, is that Kenyans are also sometimes fairly hypocritical. Kenyans will tell you, we need to reduce the size of parliament.
Yeah.
But you tell the people of Madhya, where I come from, that the way to reduce parliament is to dissolve their constituency, and they'll be happy now. So it's a problem. So how do we ensure that we maintain a small parliament, how is it possible to maintain a small parliament when people are not willing to let go of the geographical parliamentary seats that they retain today? So that becomes very difficult. Number two is the question of gender. People have refused to elect women. Now, it does not make sense to me that in a country where 50% of the population is women, where 40% of the population is below 30 or below 40, that the bulk of representatives are above 50 and are men. There's something fundamentally wrong with that picture. Now, if Kenyans do not elect these people, they do not elect young people because young people don't have the money and don't have the profile. They will not elect women because we are generally very patriarchal. We believe women cannot make good leaders, even though they make very good leaders in our homes, and they make very good leaders in corporate, and they make very good leaders in media. But we do not want them in politics where the food is being cooked. We want them outside. So how do we force that? If people refuse to elect, then they have to be willing to pay for the price of a bigger parliament if we are going to include young people and people of the other gender. So again, that's what I'm saying. These are difficult issues in which the theory of reducing parliament is very attractive. But once you get to the practical aspect of it, you've got then to decide, do we then say we just allow people to elect, and even if the parliament is just old men, that's fine with us as a country. If that is what we have chosen, then that's okay. But I'm not sure that's what we have chosen.
Which brings me to my next question. As we wind up, there's so many things that you've mentioned, and you've said we have to take the lesser evil, basically, for lack of a better term, right? And in all this, what you're seeing, and I always use the reference of when we're doing currency change. There was something, it was so swift all across the country, everybody aligned immediately. But when it comes to BBI, something is different, which is the people are not aligned because they don't know. And you're talking about, like, for example, we are a young population. We 50% of the population is women, but on the ground, vitu zukwanga different. And you find that in there, the missing link is civic education. Right?
That's true.
Is that how politicians like it? When you have an uninformed...
Sheila, you have put... That is really... Politicians thrive in people's ignorance. You see, like now, this referendum, don't be cheated that we are going to vote on the basis of whether the BBI is good in terms of the content. We're going to vote on the basis of politics. You know what I mean? We're going to decide, do we support X or do we support Y? Not whether the document makes sense or not. And politicians thrive in us not having these conversations. And and that is why I'm very careful about saying, do I support or not support? Because then it means that the minute I say I support, then anybody listens to me thinks, oh, you're saying that to support. What we should be having is a conversation without saying whether or not we agree or we don't agree. First, what is this document? What is inside? What is good? What is bad? And then one can then go and reflect and say, in consideration of that reality, I'm going to vote for or vote yes. But we have started on the side of, do I support, do I not? And then, are you for handshake or are you for tanga? And then even if I like it, I must find ways that are negative to interpret. If I'm for handshake, then I must find ways, even when there's a problem with the document, I must say it is very good. That is not healthy in a nation like this one, in which 70% of the country is literate. We can read for ourselves. We can think, and then we can make a decision. But that's not how politics works, unfortunately.
Wow.
Very interesting. We got to end that conversation there. And I know that the listener, thank you so much. That was lawyer Kamotho Waiganjo, constitutional expert. And I think you've learned a thing or two about, what we've been talking about. Have a great morning. I'll play you some busy signal. In fact, I have one more question for you.
No, I don't think you should ask
this question.
This is cheating.
So today, Chris Martin and Busy Signal are going head to head in the next round. Redeem Wars. Who are you voting for?
Gramps. Business Signal. I was about to say Gramps Morgan because that's where my head was. Business Signal, of course. Without any doubt.
All right.
All the best.
Thank you so much. Have a great morning. Hey, Kivo
Guys. The next hour Redeem was gonna go down. I think this chick already has a head start, but Nisawa, Mapema. Hey, let me tell you, I've learned a lot, man. I actually have learned a lot regarding this thing. the
At
many
the-
components
yeah.
of the BBI that are favorable
Yeah.
to especially youth and many people, many
Yeah.
other kinds of.
It's only tokens.
Yeah,
We talk
but
tokens.
yeah.
Yes.
But also, imambo ya kusema tu, yes, no, it doesn't help, you
All
know.
right.
And I'm really appreciative of the fact that the lawyer has chambuaed it
So what
the
we're
way it
gonna
should be
do?
done.
So what we're gonna do? We're gonna get somebody else to come and speak to us about those things that are for us.
Yeah.
Achana na politics.
Yes.
The ones that are for us, the young people. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've learned a thing or two. Remember to hit us up on the hashtag Kwambox and keep
Vybez Radio, we rule the nation in this generation.